Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Greenberg. My guest today is Melissa Davey. She's a documentary filmmaker who emphasizes that she's a wife, a mother, a grandmother to three young boys, and a curious world traveler. Melissa retired after more than 2 decades from Gen X Services. It's the largest managed care case management organization in the United States. Prior to that, Melissa had almost 20 years of diversified experience in the field of disability. Melissa's second act is fueled by a lifelong passion for film and storytelling. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So tell us how'd you go from corporate to filmmaking in your 60s? I mean, this is the real crux of it. Um, I love hearing that you lived 1,000 lifetimes before you even got to where you were today. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. Um, it was more or less a recognition of my age. It's like, I was 65 at the time. I'm 74 now. And I was sitting at my desk and I had done this job for decades. I could do it in my sleep. And I remember it was almost like a weird look at the clock and saying, wow, I'm still here and I'm 65. And that started this whole conversation with myself about, well, what am I doing? Am I going to stay here till I'm 80? Or, there was no ageism within the company. I was very lucky.
Okay.
There are still people today there that are, getting close to age 80 and they're still working. Yeah.
Wow.
So there wasn't that push to get out, but there was oh my gosh, how many years do I really have left to do whatever? And is this going to be it? And then I started really questioning myself about, well, what else would you do if you had the opportunity? And I started this whole internal review of my life, what I had done, what I hadn't done, why didn't I do those things that I fantasized about? And I was really having these in-depth conversations with myself. And the answer was, gee, I don't know why I haven't tried anything else. And, what should I do? What should I put on this list of things that I think would be really cool to do? And then start, investigating and asking myself, well, why haven't you done them? And, to give you an example, a silly example, one was I always wanted to learn how to play the saxophone and be in a band. And then here I am sitting there at 65 and I'm writing down saxophone player. And then I thought, well, I don't read music. So that would take a long time to figure out. And what if I wasn't good at it and I couldn't form a band? So I kind of put that at the bottom of the list. And then the other ones are, have a podcast, write a book, all the things that many people are doing now in later years. But there was one that I had a fantasy from the time I was 9 years old, and that was to either be in a film or make a film. And I've always been curious about film. I'm a huge film buff. I love movies. And I, even at a young age, I was taking out books about directors and how they made films. And it was just really curious to me. So
Melissa, let
this
me
is,
ask you, what stopped
yeah,
you in the early days of doing this?
those messages that you
Just
get
being that
from
practical person that's
society,
going to get a real
yeah,
job and
like
yeah. Okay.
you're not trained to be a
Yeah.
filmmaker. Why
Uh-huh.
would, it's a fantasy. So
Yeah.
leave it in the fantasy bucket.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that the fantasy bucket could become real, I guess, when I was younger. So, then something really curious happened. And I was at work and I reported to the CEO. I ran a big division of this company that I built for them. And he said, oh, we're being bought out again by private equity. And I'd been on that rodeo maybe 2 or 3 times within the company. And I knew what that entailed. And I knew the amount of work that would have to be done. And I knew that if I agreed to stay on as one of the executives, I'd have to give a 5-year commitment. So there I was at 65, looking at the clock, making lists. He says this to me. And then I was like, oh my God, I'd be 70. That's really old. Do I really want to be, and I'm way beyond that now. And do I really want to be sitting here doing the same thing at age 70? Because I never had the feeling that, oh, gee, I want to retire and, go to Florida or play golf or whatever it is that a lot of people seem to do. So, that happened. And then out of the blue, and it's a bit of a story, but I ended up a day on the set with M. Night Shyamalan, the
Oh my
famous director,
goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm
like
jealous.
really kismety
Wow.
kind of weird
Yeah.
thing
Okay. So
where
it's
I
a long
left
story how
work.
you got there,
Yeah,
but
a
yeah.
long story. So I ended up with him, and I mean 8 to 10 hours and behind the camera with him. I thought I was going to just be sitting in a chair, and I had been that excited since I was a kid. I was just blown away by the process, by what he was doing. I was just like, I can't believe I'm here. And we sat down together at lunch, and he said to me, "What do you do for work?" And I tried to explain this corporate position to somebody who's only made films his entire life. And he looked at me kind of like this, and he said, "Oh God, what do you really want to do?" And I said, "Oh, I want your job." And he said, "Well, you better hurry up." And it was like this silly little conversation that he wouldn't even remember, but it hit me like a ton of bricks when he said, "Well, you better hurry up." And I went home late that night, and the drive home from Philadelphia where we were filming was, a good half hour.
Okay.
And I walked in the door, and my husband said, "So, how was it?" Because he knew how excited I was. And I said, "John, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to make a movie." And he's known me a long time, so he just kind of said, "Oh, okay." And that night, I barely slept, and I came up with all these ideas. And I immediately thought that if I was to make a film, the easiest thing for me to do is a documentary, because I love storytelling. And, I'm good at it, I think. I'm comfortable with it. I wouldn't have to learn how to listen and tell somebody's story. And by the time I went to work the next morning, I had decided I'm going to do a film about older women because it's like me. It's me. Anybody over the age of 60, what are they doing? What are they doing with their lives? Let's show people that they're still relevant and that, they have this resilience and great stories to tell. So that was my first film, Beyond 60. And it was a story about 9 women. And I filmed that, for 3 years until I was done with it. And then it was distributed in 2021.
Okay,
So
so you're leaving out a big step. How did you even know how to put that together and where'd you get the camera?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I want those details.
Well, like in any new job, think about the first time you entered a job.
Right.
You were new at it. You had no idea really what you were doing. Even if you went to school for it,
Sure.
you had an inkling, but you had never practiced it. You'd never put it in play. So I was really good at building, a division of a company that, was nationwide and dealt with, huge corporations and building things for them. So I immediately knew what I didn't know. And I immediately knew that I needed to surround myself with people that knew more than I did. And that's what I did in my working life.
Mhm.
Every time I was building and creating, I was bringing on teams of people who knew more about a specific piece of the, process than I needed better than I did. I mean, and that's what I was really good at, and why I think I was successful is because I brought on people smarter than I was. So I immediately knew that, okay, well, this can't be that hard. I need to find a production company. So I started networking and reaching out to people who had connections in the industry, was introduced to a production company in Philadelphia, went to them and said, "Here's what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I want to make this film, and I need help. I need help with camera, lights, sound, all of that I know nothing about." And I thought that maybe they would introduce me to somebody or whatever, but they were very interested in the project. And these were a bunch of younger men. They were like
It's
30
interesting.
years old. And they
Wow.
were like, "This would be so cool. So let's do it with you." So I kind of hired them, brought them on. And for the next almost 3 years, we worked together until this film was completely put together. Um, and it was an amazing intergenerational experience. And I became a filmmaker in the process and
Yeah.
figured out that it was more than a fantasy. I really like doing it. I love it. So that's how it all happened.
So I'm astounded to hear that you sort of stumbled upon it and it worked, but these young men respected you when you were
Mhm,
in the process of putting this together. They listened to you, they respected you.
mhm.
That
Yes,
that had to be because you
it
had,
was a
I'm sure you had to be a little anxious going in there feeling like, I'm this older woman and they're these young
right.
kids. They're just gonna say,
I didn't know if they'd take me seriously,
yes,
and I
right,
didn't
right.
know if they, and what I said to them was, look, I have double, more than double the time on earth than you do. So I have a lot of experiences. I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm bad at. And I'm telling you that this is what I want to do. And they bought that and respected it. And they learned a lot from me. They've told me that over the years. And I learned so much from them, that let me go on to this next film that we'll talk about in a while. And
Yeah,
I have, this time I produced it myself. I directed it, produced it, because I learned so much from them. I didn't really need to bring on a full production company. I needed to hire people on my own as I needed them. And I learned that from them. So I am eternally grateful for the time that I got to spend with these young guys and young women, because I wanted young women on the film
oh yeah,
team.
oh yeah,
So a lot of the camera people, sound people were young women that I worked with. And it was just a fabulous
amazing.
experience.
We're seeing a revolution. Thousands of older adults are taking on new careers, hobbies, changing their lives in ways that we never thought possible. You know, I want to ask you also internally, emotionally, how hard or how easy was that to do after 60?
You
Because
know what?
you had to leave a comfort zone
Hmm.
that most people can't even fathom picking up and
Right,
leaving. Because most people are getting, they're getting booted out the door at 65.
right, right,
They were welcoming you with open arms to stay as long as you.
right.
That's a level of bravery that we never see.
I know, I know. And I appreciated that and I respected that. But I was also like, oh my God, who knows how many years I have left. If I want to do these five things,
Yeah.
I better hurry up, like M. Night Shyamalan said. Well, you better hurry up. So, I felt the most anxiety was around leaving a well-paid position. Okay. I was walking away from money, and money's important in life. And
Yeah.
I'm not uber wealthy. So I made very good money in my job, and I saved money as well, which helped me, you
Yeah.
know, do these films. But that was probably the scariest thing, as well as my identity was so involved in my work, and the relationships that I built with companies and CEOs and senior management level people are all over the United States, even outside of the United States. I was well respected as they were, and it was a joyous part of my life to be seen as an expert in my field and called upon by different companies to come and speak with them. So I was walking away from that ego. It's really a lot of
Yeah.
ego, I
Yeah.
think, along with the money. So those two things were a little bit of terror was in the back of my mind, but I kept saying to myself, look, if you are you really, really satisfied, and will you really be satisfied when you're dying and you say, all I ever did was this, and I stayed there till I was 80 or till I couldn't walk anymore or whatever the story might be. And my answer kept being, no, you're not going to be satisfied with that, because you're too curious about life and people and things that you might be able to do if you try them. And that's been a theme throughout my life. I've always been curious, and I've always taken detours that landed me in unusual
Yeah.
spaces that maybe helped me make a new decision about something. That happened over and over again. So my discussion with myself is, well, why wouldn't you do that right now? Why would you just stay safe and kind of bored, frankly, because you've learned to do this in your sleep, And maybe it's time to pass the torch to a younger person and let them have, all the opportunities that you did. So I did. I gave my notice, and I gave a year's notice when I did it. And I started mentoring a younger woman to take over as the vice president of this division. And she's still doing it today, and she's doing a fabulous job. And, it's like it's a letting go and allowing yourself to be in a different sphere and accepting the fact that you can't control what that sphere might look like, but that you're willing to step into it and at least give it a try. Because I always figured if it failed and it didn't work out for me, I could do something else. Maybe it would be learn the saxophone, I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
or write that book or have that podcast, but it was that need to at least try, and to break through the fear that causes internally. And it's something that you have to recognize and you have to confront in the mirror and say, yeah, it's scary. Everything you do new is kind of scary. But I'm going to do it anyway, because at the time I was 65 and I thought, if I don't do it now, I guess I'm not going to do it ever.
And
So,
that,
so, so I did it.
that's like that's the catalyst, that's the nudge, you better do it right now kind of thing. I want to ask you something. It might sound a little out of left field because I full disclosure to the audience, we always try to have a little discussion beforehand, before we record the show. You're a baby boomer.
Yep.
You were a young woman at a time where people look back and think that the baby, I'm a few years behind you. I'm the tail end of the boomers. People think we got out of high school and college and all the opportunities were there for us, that the
No.
movements have been made, the protesting changed it.
Mm-mm.
People don't understand women couldn't have a checking account or a credit card
Right.
in their own name until 1974.
That's right. And I
So,
remember that. I
yeah, yeah.
remember trying to get a department store credit card in 1973, and they would not give it to
Or
me
did they let your
unless,
father sign on for you,
well,
or
they asked for a husband or a
a husband?
father.
Mhm.
But in their literature, it said even a male child could.
Oh, that's
And I
horrifying.
remember reading that thinking, okay, well, obviously I didn't have one yet, but it was kind of like, that's absurd. So the male child wouldn't be working. I was working. I could pay the bill. So yes, we had a lot of, ceilings to break through. We still do.
Yeah.
We've come a long way from 1970. It amazes me sometimes how far we have come. But what I was never too afraid to do was to be loud. And when
Okay.
I was not getting what I needed, even back in the 70s and the 80s and the
Oh,
90s, whether it be at work or, in any kind of a group
I,
setting that I was in, if I was told no, or I was told I was being too loud, or I was being too opinionated, I just got louder. And I would argue about why I should be louder and why they're wrong, why you are so wrong in trying to cut me off. And why does the guy sitting next to me get to be loud and do whatever he wants and can interrupt people, and he gets nothing is said to that person. So I kind of grew up that way of pushing back, and I got used to it. It wasn't always accepted in a great way, but it's something that I've learned that especially as a woman, that you need to do, that you do need to be loud, that your voice does matter, and you should not shy away because you know that they're going to tell you to be quiet. And the more that you push, and I found this later in my corporate life, even with customers, the senior VPs of whatever company that were trying to diminish me, maybe because it was a Southern company, I won't name them.
mhm.
Um, People watching this will know. Uh, it was, I would not take the pushback from them. And later, years later, some of those older gentlemen said to me, you really have your shit together.
Yeah, yeah.
And, we appreciate what you bring to the table. And I said, well, just remember that you just said that, because all these women behind me have it together as well, and they have great ideas, and you need to listen to them. So I like to feel that deep South group of men that I had to work with for 10 years, and it started out very rocky with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
It ended up being an educational experience for them, and over the years, more women were put into higher positions in their company. So we as women just need to be loud, and not in a negative way, but we need to say no. I mean, didn't somebody just say, one of our wonderful female politicians, she's like, I'm talking,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking. You need to listen to me
That's right.
because
I'm not done. I'm not
I'm
done
not done.
speaking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Melissa, you've taken on a whole new career that's not only hard, time consuming, costly,
Mm,
and is, historically been a young person's sport. I'm
yeah.
curious, how have you been received in the independent filmmaking circles and, of course, in the festivals?
Independent filmmakers, for the most part, are, average age 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I belong to a lot of those groups. And I think at first it was just curiosity about who is this woman, and, why did she start making films at 65? And I wonder if they're any good. So they would watch, and say, oh, wow, this was really good. Let's talk about this. And so I've been accepted by filmmakers. I will tell you, the film festival route has become very difficult, because there are so many independent filmmakers out there today, the majority being younger. And when you submit, you pay to submit to each of these
Mhm.
festivals. And there are screeners and I'm a screener at a couple of different festivals. So I know what it's like. And the screeners tend to be demographically 25 to 35-year-old men.
Oh, really?
So yeah, that seems to be the demographic, in doing the research of all the big festivals out there. And so, you know, they're receiving a film from me. They don't know how old I am unless I tell them, but they're receiving a film about an older woman. And there have, it's rare when they reject you, they don't tell you why. They just
Mhm.
send you a lovely letter and, try again next
Yeah.
time or whatever. But I will usually call them and see if I can get any of them to talk to me. And over the years, I've gotten a couple of young people to talk with me, and they're like, well, it's a really good film. It's done really well, but we don't think that there's an audience. And we're trying to fill the seat with people that are interested in all the films that we're going to put up there. And so I will argue with them and banter with them about, I think you're missing an opportunity here, because not only is this inspirational to older women, it's been inspirational to younger women, men. I mean, I've found that by going to many, many different film festivals with my film, Beyond 60. So there is this perception that, who wants to hear a story about an old lady? Um, or another one said, if you were doing a slasher film about an old woman that's getting murdered,
Yeah.
that'd be really cool, gory. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not my interest level. I want to tell stories that will inspire people. And they said, well, I'm sure there's a place for it. We're just not into it. So yeah,
Yeah.
there is some pushback.
We'll encounter that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, right now, Sundance is one that I won't even submit to. It's very Hollywood now. You have to have a name. And they are taking 1% to 2% of submissions.
Wow.
Now, if you look at all the film festivals, the most recent statistics out there is that they're taking between 2 and 10% of submissions. So I have been rejected by 12 and accepted in 9. So I figure I'm doing pretty well right
Those are
now.
good odds. Yeah.
Very, very good. And I'm still
Mhm.
waiting on some more. But it's kind of a crapshoot, when you pay your money and you submit your film, you really don't know who's going to screen it. And I've tried with writing different letters to explain what the film's about, but I'm not sure whether that is making much of an impact. But I feel very fortunate that we're in 9 festivals right now, and I'm still waiting on about 15. So I assume there'll be a percentage of those that I will get into as well.
Well, I'm behind you to keep trying. And you know what's astounding to me, because this is my work and what I write about, and I'm sure you know this with the work you're doing. The baby boomer and Generation Jones now, this term, are you familiar with the term? It's the second half of
Yes,
the baby boomers, and we comprise 118 million people out of the
yes,
population. So to
yes, we do.
say that there isn't a market is insane. Who still goes to the movies? We do. The kids don't
I
go to the movies.
know,
We love to go to movie theaters.
I
We love to
know.
sit and we have the patience for an hour and a half movie or documentary. My
Right.
my audience for my YouTube show is older because they can sit through a 30-minute interview of
Exactly,
kids. So
exactly.
this is what there's millions and millions of people out there, and I
Right,
think it comes down to we've got to skew the mindset towards understanding that
right.
it's still, Melissa, it's still an untapped market. As much as we all talk to each other about it and we're in it, it's a gold mine
It
of
is.
people that and for us to help them, for
Right.
people to feel inspired and helped and not give up. And this is what, I always say there's room for everyone to shine in this world.
Hmm.
And I think that you are so relevant from the day you're born till the day you die, no question about it. So, what advice do you have for people who are feeling scared, feeling stuck, don't know where to turn to, and they're in that, uh, I'm just going to blanket even 55 and up, right?
Yeah,
55 and up.
yeah,
I'm 63,
yeah.
so I'm right in the throes of where am I going to go with all the stuff I'm doing, like you were when
Hmm.
you were 65.
Yeah.
What do we do? What's
I
what
mean,
yeah.
we have to continue to have conversations. The coolest thing is, people like you and all of the women out there that have wonderful podcasts, writing books, about aging and stamping down ageism. The more we are vocal and we can, attach ourselves to that audience of people in those age groups of 55 and up, the better off we're going to be. And I mean, I've seen an explosion, especially since COVID. And I think COVID, when it started in 2020, so many people started podcasts and writing books, and many of them were focused on aging and
Mhm.
all of the positives related to it. So, we have to continue the conversations, and we have to find ways to find the people that need to listen to them, because I think it has made a significant difference in people's lives. And then the ones that are on the fence saying, well, they hear me. Let me tell you, I am not a special person. I am seriously an average person who's been through a lot of not so great things in my life. I've had to, like anybody who's reached this age, I did not get here easily. There were many trials and tribulations. There were many
Mm.
times I failed at things, learn from my failures, move forward. But I was never afraid to say, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to try the next thing. I'm going to improve myself as I go through this process. So we need to help people understand that their fear is usually what holds them back. They'll say, well, I wasn't trained to do that. Well, I wasn't trained to be a filmmaker, and you probably weren't trained to be a podcaster, or I don't
No,
know.
no, this
You
is
know what
like
I mean?
completely out of my, I'm stunned at myself every single day
Exactly.
at the things I'm doing. Each segment of my life, it's so important you're talking about this. When I was 21, did I ever in a million years think I'd be on TV every other week doing cooking demonstrations for years?
Right.
No. I hosted a PBS series at one point. Like, how did that happen? So,
Right.
yeah, but I want to, I share this a lot, particularly with when I interview women. It's a partnership between us, Melissa,
Yes.
and the other women.
Yes.
Right? We are here to, I call myself like, the poor man's advocate. I'm not charging, $20,000 for a getaway weekend at an expensive spa. I am here
Hmm.
to talk to people who really feel they can't do it, or they're on a limited budget,
Exactly.
or they have physical limitations, or
Yes.
they have a husband or a family or a life that keeps them
Yes.
confined, whatever that might be. There's hope in every single situation. to feel a little bit
Absolutely.
better about yourself. Yeah.
And you
What you
don't need
can't
to
do.
have a podcast, and you don't need
That's
to
right.
become a filmmaker. You could do something simplistic that you've
Mm-hmm.
always dreamed
Right.
about, but you need to find those people to talk with that can help bring you up. And you're right. In the last, I would say the last 5 years, especially, my bucket of women, supportive women, has filled up incredibly so. I mean, when I was at work, I had, you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
have your
Mhm.
work friends,
Yeah.
but when you separate and you lose those work friends, some straggle along with you, but many of them become, yearly holiday cards or, whatever it may be, and you don't see them that often. And you realize that, maybe they provided great support when I was at work, but not for what I'm doing now.
Mm.
I now have the most incredible group of women from all over doing all different things who support me, listen to me, are actually curious about what I'm doing, and are interested in hearing what I feel and what I think about things. And they lean on me when they're in trouble, and I lean on them when I'm in trouble. And people need to bring, especially women, I think,
Yeah.
need to make sure that they have this large bucket of really good women. And there's so many groups out there now. Online, you don't have to be physically present,
Right.
which is kind of a cool thing, to form grand friendships with people. Some of the people that I talk to regularly, that I get so much from, I've never met them face to
I
face.
know. I've had
Isn't
that too.
it?
I finally met, I'm in a writing group because now I'm dabbling in novels, and I
Oh,
finally met one of the girls in my group is a retired English teacher.
yeah.
And I said, "Oh, you're a retired English teacher. How would you like to edit my book?" And she edited my current book. And
See?
we're dear, the four of us love each other. And
Yeah.
I only just met one in person literally 2 weeks ago when I was in New York.
Yeah. Isn't
It's
it amazing?
amazing, amazing.
Yeah. So
Melissa,
it's people need to
yeah,
find people, and
yes,
people need to reach out to people like you and say, what can you
and,
do to help me? I'm stuck.
yeah, and
Um,
I'm an open book. Call me, write me. I'm the same way. I will, if I can help, I will. Melissa, I want to talk a little bit about the word retire.
mhm,
It has such a terminal connotation,
it
right?
does.
But all it really means is that you're putting that part of your life behind you.
Right.
And many
Yeah.
of us, the fear of putting what we know on the shelf and starting over, it's insurmountable. What are the baby steps we can take to fulfilling our dreams? Share with us how um, emotionally. I think that's really the crux of it, right? Is that, like you say, the
Hmm.
fear and the emotional is that, okay, I put, it's like you finish reading a book and you put it down and you start the new book.
Right.
Or I'm an avid knitter, so I will finish a scarf or a sweater and I put away. I've retired that sweater. I've
Right.
retired that
You're
book.
just done with
You're
that.
just
Right.
done with that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, American culture, and it's probably true in other countries as well, but in our culture, retirement means, or it used to mean anyway,
End
you'd
of
go to
life. It's
Florida and
uh,
you
yeah. Hmm.
drink pina coladas in a rocking chair and you play golf, or all of the things that I would never do. And not that there's anything wrong with that. But for the majority of people that I have met, many people over the years, that's not their plan. That's not what they want to do. And to them, retirement means I'm just ending this.
Right.
And people say, you're retired, right? I'm like, no, I'm a filmmaker. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you retired. I said, oh, I quit my job at Gen X. I did quit when I was 65. I didn't retire. I just quit. I think the word is just
Yeah,
misused
exactly.
and misunderstood
Mhm.
all the time. So people need to make lists. I really do believe they need to do that exercise of journaling, which I think is a wonderful thing to do, about all of your dreams that you've had since you were a kid. And some of them will just remain fantasies, and some will be silly things that you're not even interested in anymore. But how important is it to look back and say, what were the things that really made my eyes open up and made my heart beat faster when I was younger? What was that? For you, maybe it was, oh man, I saw those people running marathons and there's no way I could do that, but boy, I bet that's really cool. And you kept that on your list and you actually did it.
Mhm.
And you didn't know if you were going to be good at it or if you were going to finish the race. You just decided you were interested enough to give it a try. And I think people need to know whatever they put on their list is a try. And you could fail at it, or you could find you didn't like it. You could have found that, oh, I hated that. I ran a couple of marathons. That's the end of that. But,
Yeah.
you found you loved it and you kept doing it to the point where you needed a new hip,
Yeah.
which is really cool. That's a testimony to,
Yeah.
how physical you really were. But, people need to not be afraid to think about fantasies. It doesn't mean that you're odd or unusual or, out in left field just because you have some dreams to think about. Like, why do we dismiss possibility? Why do we think that we are on a path from beginning to end, and this is the way the path started, so it needs to stay this way to make it look good, and to ensure that people around you will say, oh, well, she really knows what she's doing. Because believe me, when you jump off the path, you will hear a few people say, what are you doing?
Oh, of
You're
course.
crazy,
Of course. Yeah.
and I heard that. And I just, I said, yeah, I'm trying something new. That's all. I,
It's that age old, literally and figuratively, someone will say, oh, I'm too old to start something new. I'm too old to uh, sign up for a race. I'm too old to
right,
be a filmmaker.
right.
Nobody wants the old people around anymore. And that's, the gals over at Changing the Narrative, Janine
Yes,
Vandenberg
yes,
and Chris Gherkin. I love them because
yes,
all they're talking about is you know what? There might be things you are too old to do, but that's like a
right,
physical reality. But
right. And you'll find out.
yeah, and you're not too old to try. You're never
Right,
too old to try anything.
right.
You're never too old to
Exactly.
meet somebody new. You're never too old to reach out and find something new out about the world or about life. Melissa,
Right.
how does becoming a grandmother affect your outlook on the world?
And I've been a grandmother for a while. I have three grandsons, 19, 16, and
Oh, they're
13.
big. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I look at the world. I think of them when I look at the state of the world, which frightens the heck out of me,
Mhm.
and how I want to try to improve the world for them and try to leave messaging for them about women,
Yeah.
especially about women because they're boys. And I think I get through to them at times. Um, but they are my impetus to continue to be who I am and show them who I am. So they never dismiss somebody who is older, especially not an older woman. And, the most talkative grandson is my middle one, Luke. And, he has said to me on more than one occasion, I can't believe how old you are. Because honest to God, Grammy, you
Mhm.
don't seem that old. I said, well, what do you mean? So we do have those
Yeah. Yeah.
conversations. And he gets, he says, hey, I don't know anybody else's grandmother who's making movies.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, well, maybe they are doing something really interesting and you should sort of check it out
Mhm.
because, we only get old if we allow ourselves to, or if something unfortunate happens and we're very, very ill and we can no longer do the things that we want to do. But they all know that I have drive. And I think that that's important for them to understand when they look at the world, which is filled with women and a lot of older women. I want them to see that, respect that, and realize that even for themselves, when they get older, there will be all kinds of opportunities that may open up for them, and they should try them and not be afraid.
You now have a second documentary out. I mean, one is stunning enough. Two,
Yeah.
Melissa, I can't tell you what admiration I have for you
Thanks.
to keep going. Not because I think you're old and you can't do it. It just the chutzpah to even take that on is because I'd like to do that someday. So you're a tremendous inspiration. Tell us about. It's called Climbing into Life.
Yeah.
Tell us the story.
Oh, It is the story, life story of Deirdre Wallenick, who is now 73 years old. And at 66, she became the oldest woman to ascend El Capitan in Yosemite. And her story really resonated with me because she was never an athlete. She never did anything. She started
Oh,
running
really?
when she was
Wow.
60. She started running, and she couldn't even run a mile. You can relate to
Oh,
that,
I
I'm sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. And her daughter was running, and she was inspired by her children. And her children are very remarkable. Her daughter's like a long distance bicyclist who, you know, rode her bicycle from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, that kind of a
Oh, God.
she's an
Wow. Yeah.
amazing young woman. And her son is Alex Honnold from the movie Free Solo. If you've seen that, it's a documentary put out by National Geographic that won the Oscar in 2019 or 18. And she was inspired by him, wondering, what is he doing out there on those rocks? And she was really concerned about him. And he was really a free spirit off on his own, very young. And she asked him one day, would you at least show me how to do this in a gym so I know what the heck you
Yeah.
and your friends are talking about? Because she's an academic. She's
Yeah.
an artist and a musician and a professor and a writer. I mean, she did all things intellectual,
Right.
academically. And she was never an athlete, but she was really spurred on by her kids. So he took her to the rock gym and she got the bug and she loved it.
Wow.
And she was like, wow, I can't even believe I can do this. And then she said to him much later, would you ever, after Free Solo, would you consider taking me up El Capitan? And he said, sure, Mom. You have to learn how to jug so we can get you up there. Now, remember, Free Solo means Alex did this, the only person in the world that has done this on El Capitan. He climbed that 3,200-foot granite monolith with no equipment, just his shorts, t-shirt, and sneakers.
No
Nothing,
picks or anything? No, I
nothing.
don't know the drill on that, but
Took him 10
wow.
years to figure out how to map it
Okay.
out and how to
Okay.
do it. And the filming of it is incredible to watch because nobody knew if he was going to live or die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. So fast forward, he takes Mom up when she was 66 years old. And, of course, she was all roped in and,
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
it the right way.
Yeah.
But she was still the oldest woman to ascend that incredible wall. And then she did it again on her 70th birthday with just her friends. So, getting to hear her story about what her life was like from the time that she was a child that brought her to this, a failed marriage and, all kinds of things that went wrong in her life, and how she had the determination once she figured out that she kind of liked it. It's truly remarkable and very, very inspirational. And when I met her online during COVID, um, she said, oh, you're a filmmaker? I said, yeah. And she said, oh, I have a story that I think you might be interested in. And at that moment in time, I knew about Free Solo. I had watched it. I did not
Okay.
know she was his mother.
Okay.
I had no idea.
You met her in a completely different
Yeah,
circumstance.
yeah. And
Amazing.
so she started telling me the story, and I thought, wow. So we spent a year online just talking about how this would work, the logistics of it. And then that next year, I went out to California to film her at her home and at the Rock Gym and at Yosemite. Um, and it's a great little movie about her life.
So
She has a remarkable story.
you and your crew physically went to the El Capitan in Yosemite and filmed her climbing that.
We did. Now, we didn't film her climbing to the top. We
Right.
filmed her climbing in various places in Yosemite, including El Capitan. Yes. And and I hired a climbing videographer to do that piece of the
Mhm.
filming, which was remarkable to see. And the biggest challenge in making that film was me physically making it when they said, oh, we have to do a little hike in to get to the point where she starts climbing. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not the most fit person, But boy, did I find out how unfit I was when I didn't realize that their little hike in meant 1,000 feet up to get to the point where you would start climbing. And it was over boulders and rocks. And it was the most challenging physical thing I had done in a very long time. And I just couldn't believe it. I thought, well, how in God's name do these people have the energy after doing that to start climbing 3,200 feet up?
It is climbing is so there's the altitude, there's the hills, like
oh,
you say, the obstacles getting there. It's stunning.
yeah,
Like you say, have the stamina and the fortitude to want to continue because it
yeah.
is challenging.
It
Yeah.
was just, it was
Yeah.
so amazing. It
Yeah.
was so fun, though. It
Yeah.
was, I mean, Yosemite's so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
We spent a few days there and then a few days at her house in the rock gym. And Alex has a little cameo in the film. I
Okay.
met him at Yosemite. He was very accommodating for somebody who I didn't think was going to even be interested in talking with me. He was great. Yeah. So it was
Wonderful.
amazing experience. And to be able to go now this weekend to Sacramento and screen it as the
Yeah, I was going to say,
premiere.
tell us what you have coming up and where
Yeah.
the films are going to be and what's doing with
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
It got into the Los Angeles liftoff and the Toronto, which are Toronto's over now. That was a virtual. LA is in progress right now. Broadway, LA is also a
Okay.
virtual starting this weekend. But the premiere in a theater with people will be in Sacramento, which is perfect because that's where she lives. And that's where a lot of the filming was done. So I
Okay.
filmed in her home in Sacramento area, and then at the Sacramento Rock Gym, we were there. So the people that were interviewed there will be at the film. The folks that were at Yosemite, the climbing videographer and all those other folks, they will be there, which will be wonderful, and Deirdre herself. So it will be a mini reunion and a first time that everybody gets to see the film together. So really, really excited about that.
I wish you just the world with this,
Thank you.
that the whole world gets to
Thank you.
experience this and share this with you. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us here in Aging Well. And to reach out to Melissa Davey for more information and learn about her films Beyond 60 and Climbing into Life, you can go to melissadavey.documentaryfilmmaker.com, and we will also include that link when the show airs.
Okay,
Well,
great.
Melissa, in closing, I want to ask you, what do you like about getting older?
I just I like me.
Yeah.
I like the fact that I finally like me the way I am and that I'm able to say no to things that I don't want to do and not feel guilty about it and say yes to all the exciting things that are out there that I might have missed when I was younger. I might not have paid attention to them. I love taking detours and finding things that, will make me try something new. So I love that about getting older, and I hope it keeps happening.
Absolutely. And I wish you many, many, many years of success and happiness with all of this.
Thank
And
you.
I want to thank all of you who are listening. I'm Patricia Greenberg, and for more shows on aging well, please subscribe to this channel. And for more information, feedback, and topic ideas, you can contact me at www.patriciagreenberg.com. Stay well and stay safe. And again, thank you, Melissa, for joining us. And we hope to have you back with some future date.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. You're welcome.